into this. And water quality maintenance is the most glaring shortcoming that we have. We have done a great job of writing manuals, putting regulations in place, and doing a lot of other things. But one of the things where we've really fallen down is in the field of maintaining what we've done and learning how to sustain what we've done. And the reason is because it's not a simple solution, and it's not a quick and easy solution. So we need to get organized and learn to maintain what we've done, and it takes an organized approach to do this. And I'm going to go through these different activities. This is a little different than what you're used to hearing out of me. I love to dwell on science as much as I can, but it looked good on paper is an old saying, but it's very true. It can look as good as you want on paper. It can meet every qualification, but if somebody doesn't pay attention to our BMPs, they're designed to catch things. They need to be cleaned. If somebody doesn't pay attention, all of that goes for nothing. So there's a wide range of activities. First, it starts off with inspections. You have to be able to take a good look at what you've got out in the field and learn from what you put in the field. There are routine maintenance activities. This includes mowing and other things like that, policing up litter, simple things. There's land management and landscaping. That would be erosion control, to watch slopes and embankments. That would be replacing plants if you have hydrophilic plants in a wetland, for example. A knowledgeable landscaping person needs to come in and take care of that. So land management, landscaping is another activity. There's vault or small structure cleaning. This would be sumps, catch basins, manufactured devices like we make. There's infiltration repair. This is where this isn't a routine activity would be to take the trash and debris and vegetation off the top of a sand filter. Infiltration repair would be when you had to go in, change the under drain system, replace the sand, that sort of thing. There's filtration replacement, and this is, I'm talking here about media filters, where you might need to change the media, add some compost, leaf mold, that sort of thing. Then the last two big ones, which are extremely expensive, is underground sediment removal and surface sediment removal. These BMPs slow the water down typically, and even the ones that are made to get out constituents don't necessarily want to get sediment, but they do get sediment. So let's go through these one by one. Inspections. If you don't have a good inspection system, it's impossible to have an organized program, because if you start inspecting BMPs, you will produce data that will let you refine your scheduling. You know, just how often does a pond need to be mowed in the summer in your area? How often do you need to clean out a catch basin sump because it is filled with sediment? And is it seasonal, and when does that change? If you've got a manufactured BMP where the manufacturer said clean it out yearly, but the bottom of it's full of sediment in 6 months. So you need to produce that data to refine your scheduling so that when you build maintenance agreements and require maintenance on plans and permitting, you've got something to base it on other than some other guy's manual in the state that might be 2,000 miles away. Inspections will reduce all your maintenance costs. You will catch a problem before it gets to be a bad problem. You may catch a little small erosion spot on the back of a berm that, if left alone for 2 years, could take the whole pond out. It will show you what works and what does not work, especially in the field of equally rated, manual rated land-based BMPs. Maybe you get the same credit for a swale as you do for a wet pond or for a dry pond, but you'll learn pretty quickly what works and what does not work if you're out inspecting. You can find chronic violators. You can find people who constantly refuse to do what is right. That might be illicit discharges, washing vehicles in their parking lot, putting hydrocarbons in a pond. Inspections will let you see that and start to discover that. It'll provide you vital information for reporting. There's been many jurisdictions that's been audited or had their permit reviewed, and they just don't have information on their BMPs. They don't have the inspection reports and the things that they need to have. It'll protect your permit, so you can defend yourself about what your activities will be. It'll also make your BMPs more effective, and it can improve your watersheds. That's the result of all these activities above. So, and there are a lot of other things that when you go out to do inspections, and then we'll get into that. We're talking about, say, land-based ponds and landscaping, that where you may have a small undermining bed of a pipe or bad backfill that can get worse over time. So a maintenance company or a division of your jurisdiction must have good inspection capabilities. You know, sometimes it falls to public works, sometimes too there is a stormwater utility, and there's a stormwater maintenance facility. So routine activities. These are things that go on every day. Now, these folks here are not exactly doing the right routine activity by blowing all of the vegetative debris into the street, but I think you can see that mowing and attention to normal landscape maintenance is important around BMPs, and it's important in areas that feed BMPs. So you rake and you remove trimmings, pick up trash. A routine activity could be measuring the sediment depth, the simple sediment depth, looking inside a sump, taking a look at it. That's not getting in it, that's not cleaning it, just getting some idea on a routine activity when you're out there anyway. You might as well take a little look at what's around. And so measuring sediment might be a thing. You might want to clear a V-notch weir or a notch weir in a pond. Simple activity where a branch or something may have got into it. Right now it's not so bad, but it could get plugged up, cause your pond to hold water, bring mosquitoes, a bunch of other things. And these are routine things. And perhaps applying pesticides. If there are insects or other vectors that have gathered around a wet pond or that sort of thing, a routine activity is an activity that's should be done often, but it gets us a chance for a pair of eyes to get out there in the field and take a look at your BMPs. Now, a maintenance company or division might have the owners of the property perform these activities. That's required in some areas. They may contract for these services if it's not something that they do. For example, we've added mowing services to our company recently. There was a time when all we did was contract that out because we didn't want to run mowing crews. Or they may have a crew of their own, of course, to provide these activities. Another piece of maintaining BMPs is land management and landscaping. This is over and above routine activities, and this might be erosion control. The erosion that occurs around properties because of poor, and I have plant or turf replacement next, because of poor turf or bare areas. This goes normally directly to a pond or an underground detention system. And so erosion control is not quite a routine activity because it could involve hydroseeding. It could involve someone that knows a little bit about turf management. So this is a piece of landscaping and land management. Removal of woody growth in berms and dams. Most people in the business understand this, that roots undermine these berms and provide a path for water to leak, and once the water starts leaking, it gets worse. They also can destroy structural BMPs, such as sand filters, where they're not removed. It doesn't take long for a volunteer pine tree to get into an underdrain system and cause trouble. Replacing riprap. Where there's begun to be erosion and the energy dissipation riprap behind a pond or an outlet. Channel stabilization, maybe adding erosion control mat. Maybe it's something more serious than that where discharges have started to degenerate channels or overland paths above a pond or maybe even below a pond going off-site. And then controlling invasive growth. It might be algicides. It could be cutting plants inside of a pond. This isn't quite as simple as routine maintenance. It takes some special training. You wouldn't necessarily want someone untrained to get down into a pond and try to cut cattails or things like that. So land management, landscaping is a little bit different level of maintenance. And one of the things, of course, the statement at the bottom that a company may or division may contract for these services or have crews, you'll see it often and early and often in here. And I'm doing it for a reason. A lot of folks say, well, we don't have the personnel to do that. We're not trained to do that. And I think if you look around in most jurisdictions, you'll find out you do have almost all the equipment, and you may have cross divisions, other divisions like road maintenance that have the mowers and other things you might need. So, but one thing that's important, this land management and landscaping, which is discovered how with routine maintenance and inspection, attention to these items are vital to the long-term sustainability of BMPs, especially land-based BMPs. If you're ignoring this, you're creating problems that are very, very, very difficult to solve. This is something that you really should not overlook. Evolved small structure cleaning. I think I've seen a better program for this really in the northern part of the country where catch basins are a little more common. Sumps in catch basins are a little more common than we see in the south of here. But the ability to clean vaults and small structures is a little more specialized than the land-based maintenance. This would include cleaning manufactured products. Some of these can be cleaned from the top down, some can't. The catch basin sumps. Sand filter forebays. I've recently seen a lot of underground sand filters that might be 100 feet long, and the forebay is 100 feet long. They're in ground 7 or 8 feet high. This is a detail that's used in North Carolina and some other places. But keeping that forebay clean can keep that sand filter clean, which can really save you a lot of money. And this is something that's important. I say vaults or small structures. The technique's about the same. The quantities are a little different. Cleaning of cisterns, and especially forebays to cisterns, to keep them so that they can continue to be used for secondary water usage. Outlet control structures and low flow orifices. This is the kind of thing where you may need to pump mud away from a structure. You may need to bring in gravel and wrap it in cloth so that this low flow orifice can be maintained. There's a little more specialized equipment here, and certainly when you go to confined space entry, there is specialized equipment, specialized screws, ventilation, sniffing, and a ton of things. So you never know with a storm drain system. You honestly never know what someone may have put intentionally or unintentionally in that storm drain. There's a lot of hydrocarbons. We've seen paint thinner. We've seen everything from small animals, you name it, inside of these structures. And so when you least expect it sometime, you're going to confront hazardous materials. You may confront invisible gases. So we're kind of moving up the ladder of complexity here. But once again, a company or division can contract for these services or have crews to perform these services. Most cities and jurisdictions have vacuum trucks. They really don't have a vacuum system that's made to get to the lower end of a pond that might be down a long 3-to-1 or 2-to-1 slope or that sort of thing. So sometimes you'll see these things are contracted out. Infiltration repair. Now this isn't the full replacement thing, but this is the picture of a sand filter that had a grate over the top and had quite a crop each summer of vegetation inside of it. And so controlling this vegetation and trash can be routine if the infiltration bed's on the surface. You remove the grates, you get down inside. This has looks to me, I wasn't there, but looks to me like it had a pipe coming in one end and an overflow weir where then the water could go down through the sand. It may have had these chambers on both ends. One is a forebay, and then one is kind of a post forebay, as if the water had to overflow the sand filter, and the sand filter essentially went offline at that point. But it can be, this can be almost routine if it's on the surface. This is something that could be pushed back into a routine maintenance. Now, sand filters also can be very large, and if you have to replace the media, it's a major effort. This is a lot of sand, a lot of weight, and usually these are located fairly convenient to a property, and the reason is they have a significant amount of fall through them most of the time, so it's usually close to a parking lot or close to an access point. But it is something you have to think about, and of course you have to carry off the spent material. So you need to have a little bit of logistics involved here. If there's an under drain system, and there usually is, you need to be careful. This essentially has to be almost be done by hand when you get down around the pipes. If it's underground, then infiltration repair becomes very complicated. You are working obviously in a confined space. You have to have enough access points to do that legally. Quite a number of these really don't have the proper access for a crew to get in and work, and so they become a maintenance nightmare really. But keeping up the forebay on a sand filter helps make that time when you do have to finally go in and clean it much simpler task. Once you have a natural soil field, an infiltration field, for example, with chambers over it or with pipes over it that are perforated in gravel, once that field stops infiltrating, it cannot be repaired. It's lost the conduit, the very small spaces that allow the water to percolate down through it. Water begins to gather on the top. So when you go for infiltration repair, there are some infiltration systems, natural soil-based systems, that cannot be repaired. This goes back to the routine maintenance and inspection and the other things that are necessary to protect these BMPs. So forebay cleaning is critical to lower the repair costs. You keep the front of it clean, the sand filter is going to be a lot cleaner. It's much easier to remove material from a forebay, including entering that forebay, than it is to try to get into the sand filter and get it off the top of the sand, redress the top of the sand. Frequent cleaning of the media surface can save a lot of cost for this very expensive process. When in a situation like this where the sand filters become impacted, you didn't have, I don't think in this case, but it could have very major effects on not only the under drain system, but the concrete itself. Vegetation, once it finds a crack, can be very effective at destroying concrete and other things. So again, this when you're looking at the whole genre of BMP maintenance, you start looking at sand filters and infiltration repair, it can be a little bit daunting to a jurisdiction. A lot of times you can understand why people try to avoid this, and why when they put a stormwater utility in place, it seems like for a good period of time all the money goes to infrastructure repair of pipes and to stop flooding and that sort of thing. Pushed to the back of burner is the task of actually cleaning these BMPs and keeping them functioning properly. Well, filtration replacement, I kind of make that distinction. These are my terms. I wouldn't say they're out there in the literature. Filtration replacement, I'm talking about media that is designed to remove pollutants, dissolve pollutants, or to interact with them chemically. So in a manufactured product, this could be a canister or a filter pack replacement. Some of these canisters can have new media put in them. They're user serviceable. Some of them aren't. Filter packs generally lie flat and that material goes through them, but they have a combination, usually have a combination of absorbent materials, zeolite, perlite, activated charcoal, that sort of thing on it. Now cisterns, the filter media in cisterns, they generally have very fine media and other filters. It makes sense to protect a cistern on the front side so that the media and other filters behind it that are going out to the pump system where you're pumping this water out for landscaping or whatever your other usage would be. That's another aspect of filtration replacement. This is almost always, these systems are almost always confined space entry. You will seldom see one of these systems above ground out in the air where you can get to it. Natural materials in these systems, such as compost, leaf mold, perlite, zeolite, they may need bulk replacement. If you're replacing the media inside canisters, and there's 60 canisters, maybe 5 to 7 gallons apiece, that's a good bit of material that needs to be transported to the site, loaded in, and then you have to haul away and dispose the exhausted material. Quite often with canisters, they ship the entire canister back to the factory for replacement. So again, a maintenance program that's looking at all the BMPs in a jurisdiction, or a company that offers the services like we offer, have to look for these types of services, and sometimes some of this stuff has to be contracted out. There's a lot of weight involved with removing filter packs. Underground sediment removal, this might be the most expensive maintenance job on the planet. The picture I have here is a pipe that's at a university. There's a very small impact here. This thing is probably only got 6 inches of sediment in a 60 or maybe 72-inch pipe. This is a big pipe big enough to walk through. But it's very hard and expensive to clean. You can do this with shovels, or you can try to jet it to one end, but you can see the size of some of those cobblestones in there. Jetting this out, if there are not sufficient manway accesses, is a difficult task. There are literally thousands and thousands of in-ground pipe detention systems in place in this country. And most of them are unprotected. That means if you inherit the maintenance on one of these systems, I guess if you're a for-profit company like us, it's a big job, and it's a good job. If you're a jurisdiction and you have a maintenance division, it might be worth your while to consider, at the very least, putting a little 4-bay vault in front of a pipe like this so that you never have to get in there. This kind of material would never get through a 4-bay. And clean it the easy way from above, as opposed to trying to get in the long pipe and move material. Well, confined space entry is going to be required. There are many spaces you just can't enter. I see these systems with 36-inch pipes. I see them designed where an engineer would need an 18-inch pipe, but he puts in a 36, and he intentionally puts that outlet control device at the end. Maybe it's 150 feet of 36-inch pipe, and it fills with sediment because it's supposed to. There just is not a way to enter that space. The quantities can be huge. Once this material is moved to a place where you can get it out, you have to take it out and haul it up and transport it. If you're jetting this material, which is a common way to clean pipes, you're going to have to look at disposal of the excess water that you get from jetting. Some of this water can go through a silt bag and be cleaned reasonably well, but most places have rules against dry weather discharges. And so you're going to have to make some arrangement for what you do with the water if you're going to be jetting out pipes. So this is pretty much the worst of all cases, and you need to avoid this. If you are an entity that's approving BMPs, I'm not telling you to don't approve in-ground storage. I'm telling you, if you're going to approve it, protect it. If you're going to have infiltration, protect it. If you're going to build constructed wetlands and infiltrate water and try to build a water table, you need to protect it. Because, not because it's good science. It is good science. You need to protect it because you're going to pay to replace it, or you're going to pay to clean it. And it's really, really important to do this. I've said it time and time again. It's not the patents. It's not the fluid dynamics research we've done or anything else that I've learned the most about. I came out of mining, and moving material around with water is pretty straightforward in that industry. But what I've learned the most about is Jeff Askew's company and what we've encountered in the field and what we've learned over time as far as maintaining BMPs. So once again, maintenance company division may contract for these services. This is very dirty, tough work in a confined space. It's hot in the summer. It's cold in the winter. Lots of bugs. So it's something that you want to try to avoid if you can. Surface sediment removal is not a pretty job either. It's very equipment intensive. In this particular case, I probably shouldn't have used this picture. I wouldn't have used it if I had noticed that somebody was pumping water over the berm out into an MS4, which is certainly, it looks pretty, maybe it's raining. We could say it's not a dry weather discharge, but there's certainly some water untreated going out of this pond. But wet ponds are problematic. It's not that we shouldn't use wet ponds. They've proven to be more effective, but in the design phase, you need to think about how we're going to get into that pond, how we're going to maintain that pond. Remember, when we go back to routine maintenance, a simple thing like a branch that plugs up a weir could cause a pond to hold extra water, could cause extra sedimentation. A poorly maintained slope could put tons, literally in a year, tons and tons of mud that mud won't distribute evenly. You'll have little pockets of mosquitoes where you don't expect them. So this is where it really pays off. This and underground storage is where it really pays off to do those things we listed first. You know, I'll go for a quick review. Do the inspection so you know what's going on and you know what works. Do the routine maintenance. Have the mowing done. Have somebody look at these BMPs. Now, pumping water downstream, as I said, may violate dry weather discharge rules. You need to check. How it's enforced changes from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, to be perfectly honest with you. Sometimes I think officials just want to look the other way because they need to pump down ponds, and they'll do a dry weather discharge. Their own crews will. We use a bladder in a lot of jurisdictions because they have told us not to discharge. So we put the water back into our BMP. That would be a little tough to do with a big pond, but dry weather discharge is something you need to consider. Wet weather can interrupt the job. There are places in this country that have long dry spells and are perfectly suited for cleaning ponds, especially if it's a dry pond. Or they can drain a wet pond and know they're going to have a week or two of dry weather that will help them remove this material a lot easier than if it were wet. But you do have to understand the weather and different weather patterns. Pacific Northwest pretty much stays wet, waiting for a dry day. You might wait a while. So you need to consider those things. Material has to be hauled, and you have to have a spoil site. This would typically be a landfill, but it depends on whether or not they're going to want that material to use for cover or whether or not they can store it. Soil and erosion control is needed here at the site. It's needed at the spoil site. You need to think about that. You probably will need to restore the vegetation in a wet pond if it has a biotic feature after you clean it. So soil and erosion control is something you got to think about. Now, if this material is impacted with hydrocarbons or with trash where it might not be desirable for fill material, you may really drop your price of disposal up. So surface sediment removal is, you know, it probably comes pretty close to tying underground sediment removal as the #1 problem for a maintenance company. Well, you saw that statement over and over again. A maintenance company or division may contract these services or have crews. Most of the time, a municipality of any size will have almost all the equipment they need. It might not be in the stormwater utility division, or it might not be in the maintenance division for public works, but they have the mowers, they've got the vacuum trucks, street sweepers. A street sweeper can save a lot of effort at removing materials from ponds and BMPs. Maybe you've got the Hydro City. Certainly you'd have dump trucks, tractors, pumps. If you run your own utilities, you've probably got a lot of that material out there. So, and often these other divisions will have idle time for this equipment, where they're not really using the equipment as intensely as they might in other circumstances. So, something to think about is that there's a lot of this equipment out there. It's not necessarily unusual equipment, and usually a municipality will have a confined space entry crew. Often, however, it makes sense to consider contracting this one way or the other. So how are you going to pay for this stuff? Well, the cost of maintenance is a major reason it's ignored. And I've heard it over and over again. We will go to a municipality and say, hey, you've got these rules, you've got the maintenance contract in place. We're finding that nobody's maintaining their BMPs. They go, well, we don't really have the staff to inspect it. And we've even had people tell us not to send our paperwork to them. They don't know what to do with it when they get a manifest. And I'm not really complaining about that. I'm just saying it's got to be a daunting problem for someone to consider a new tax, or that's what people have learned to call that a rain tax. Stormwater utilities aren't popular. The work is expensive and it's difficult. And it's amazing to me how now, after some people have some experience, the estimates of maintaining BMPs have changed incredibly over the last 5 years. Because it is expensive, and people would like to go, oh, well, it probably only costs $1,000 an acre to clean a wet pond per year. and then they get the bill and they start to kind of revise and think. So it's hard to tell someone that they need to form a new department and start a big budget for this sort of thing. Citizens don't understand the need for storm drain maintenance unless there's flooding in their street. That's about as far as it goes. If their streets doesn't flood and they can drive through it, they're pretty happy. And most owners don't really have no idea they own a BMP or need to clean it. So how you pay for it is a question that certainly I don't have the answer to, but I do have some answers. First of all, solving the problem of high maintenance costs and finding a contractor or a crew to do it starts by knowing the cost. And as you inspect, you will start to find out how quickly ponds silt out and what a huge effect maintenance of the area around the pond has on how fast they silt out, and what an effect maybe a forebay or a manufactured product up front can do. But today, using $4,000 per acre annualized cost for a pond looks like a good number. So you get your own cost and use those if you are able to do that maintenance and you have records of that maintenance. Probably of that 4,000, 1,000 of it's the cost of routine maintenance. That's 2 or 3 mowings in a summer, maybe an inspection or 2 that's sometimes done during other routine maintenance. There can be an inspection report filled out by a landscape crew if they are taught to go look at 3 different things or 4 different things other than just mow the pond. They're right there. The remaining 3,000 is annualized cost of dredging or demucking, say, a 10-year or 5-year interval. Now, the important thing is that 3,000 can double or triple if you've got a poor design and you have not paid attention to how that pond is put in and how that pond's protected. So there's just a few things here I'll mention about this, and I've got a point here that I'm going toward, which is if it's tough, there's no sense for you to make it tougher, and there's inexpensive things you can do to drive that cost down. Access is the #1 problem, drives up sediment removal costs, either having to get underground or using a tracked vehicle to get down to a pond, and dredging as opposed to being able to scrape. Standing water increases sediment costs. A standing base flow, springs, incorporating a stream into a site design, piping it through and putting that through the pond, it complicates sediment removal because you are never going to have a dry way to get into that pond. Turbid water can be a problem. Watch obviously your discharges. You've got to worry about revegetating. Ponds without forebays or pretreatment are a liability. I can't imagine building a pond if I had to pay for cleaning it without a forebay where I wanted the sediment to gather, or a manufactured forebay. Have a plan for disposal of the sediments in place at all times. Do it in advance. Don't say, hey, I've got 400 cubic yards of pond muck I need to dispose of. Put you at the mercy of a landfill or whatever. Get an agreement in place. If you have a regular supply of this material, landfills can come to depend on it when they are finishing up a phase or finishing up a cell, that sort of thing. Material testing can reduce disposal costs from a complex decanting facility to simple land application. If you've got a lot of hydrocarbons and you've got other impacts into a vault or an underground system, you're going to have to decant somewhere that has a manifest, and it's going to be complex. If you've got storm drain debris that came out of a catch basin sump that's relatively clean, then you're probably going to be able to do land application. You have to obviously check with your local rules and your particular representative of the EPA in your state to get the skinny on that. But a little bit of planning in advance can save you a lot of money. So if you reduce the volume of sediments and debris that's in the difficult places, and remember the difficult places are anywhere underground and anywhere that's wet. So we found, and this is pretty well known, everybody in my business claims we get 80% of the solids. Really, it's more like 90% when you look at stormwater, and I'll tell you why. Regulators really want to press on manufacturers, and that's fine, and they really want to emphasize small particles. And small particles don't really exist in free in the water. They've found somebody to stick to. They've already been attached. And I'm not trying to pitch you on how to design here, but I'm saying if you get 80% in the lab of this smaller gradation, you're going to really do well in the field. Scientific study done by the EPA of our device in Griffin said we caught 98% of the sand. And this is very, very typical of, if you go look at any manufactured devices test where they do a sand silt split, yeah, they're going to be above 95%, maybe even better on the sand. Okay, so an effective forebay or pretreatment, think about it. You're going to have you go 10 times as long before you need to clean this guy out. A facility like that's easier to access and easier to clean. Sediment storage that's provided in these ponds can be 10 times smaller, so the pond gets smaller. So that reduces your routine maintenance and gives you an inspection opportunity if you have someone coming out every 6 months to clean out, say, if it doesn't have to be a manufactured product, it's just a bare vault forebay that's collecting sediment. But they're going to be there every 6 months, maybe every 90 days is fine. If you're a city and you really want to see what's going on, get out there, take a look, inspect that pond, look at the riprap, look at the banks, look at the turf in the area to make sure you're not impacting something. So for $900 annually to clean a pretreatment device, that's a 1 acre device. That's a real number. It's averaged out of our maintenance company. The savings could be $2,700 annualized on your major maintenance cost. So in 10 years, you might save $27,000 by spending $9,000, which is a pretty good trade-off. The maintenance interval on a pond can be increased as the pond's not impacted. The reduced volume means that the pond outlet control is going to work better. Nutrient reduction is accomplished by pretreatment, so water quality is further enhanced. And if you control hydrocarbons, you're never going to have that big bill for the, like we saw at one state DOT where they spilled 115 gallons of gas into a big wet pond. 1 acre wet pond spent $60,000 cleaning the impacts up. So you avoid that catastrophic problem. If you are thinking about a maintenance company or a maintenance division, the things that you can do to reduce your costs are absolutely critical. And this is just a little example. If you go back through every BMP I've mentioned, you can find similar ways to reduce the cost. 5 acre site with a wet pond, $200,000 over 10 years. At the number we said, $4,000. So if you save $2,700 per acre, that's $13,500. 10-year period, that's $135,000 in savings. Now, that's savings over what, say, I might bill you to clean it. But if you're in charge of a stormwater utility and you can save $135,000 out of $200,000, that is a huge impact with less crews, less trucks, less effort. Not to mention the fact we're cleaning up the watersheds at the same time. Land cost savings will be significant. Remember, one thing you have to remember, that pre-treating a BMP, whether it's a forebay or a manufactured product, whatever it is, that doesn't stop your need for channel bank protection or overall volume reduction. And what I'm talking about there is, we tend to try today to hold for 24 to 72 hours a portion, usually an inch or so, of the storm so that the streams don't get overran quickly. We don't want to release it in 10 or 15 minutes like we used to with regular detention. We want to hold it back as long as we can. That's called channel bank protection. What I'm talking about to keep your pond clean has nothing to do with volume reduction or storage. So you're not going to reduce the volume that's running off your property, but you are going to protect those things that do control your outlet rate. And you may condition the water well enough that you can use a cistern and do some volume reduction. So it's not a huge reduction in pond size by this. It's just a huge reduction in the maintenance cost. And as I just mentioned, good pretreatment may allow you some on-site reuse for landscaping, for washdowns, things like that. The life cycle cost, maintenance interval, lifespan of any BMP downstream of a good pretreatment will always be enhanced. And I can add there, I didn't have room to add there, but I could add there the life cycle cost, maintenance interval, lifespan of any BMP that has a good inspection program and good routine maintenance will all be enhanced. Every single thing you can do in that simple mode, not complex confined space entry, not complex material handling, simple inspections, simple routine maintenance. So the key to implementing a good maintenance program is good inspections. If you don't know what you got, you can't fix it. If you don't know the size of the problem and how you got what you got working, how it's working in the field, you cannot possibly address that. So if the cost and logistics of maintenance seem daunting, you've got to inspect and get the size and scope of your problem. By the way, I guess most of the jurisdictional people here are aware that there's been a lot more, I would say, noise in the last 2 years about maintenance and measurable results and auditing of maintenance activities. And so probably some of you are starting to look at the cost and logistics of maintenance at this point. So I would highly urge you to get that inspection program going. And you may be able to do it very simply with a small cost by hiring landscape crews that are out anyway, that are in these areas. There's a lot of things you can do, but inspections are the start. Once you have an idea of the problems with your current practices, revise them to minimize the cost. You can't do anything about an unprotected in-ground pipe system that's 36 inches that you put out there, that you approve and that someone's got under their gas station. That's done. You can't do anything about an unprotected pond that you know is silting out. You can see the cattails and you can see it holding water and you can hear the complaints about the mosquitoes in the summertime and the people that see all the trash in it. But you can revise your current practices and your current development rules. You should emphasize sustainability and low maintenance cost in your design regulations and policies. You should reward people that are putting out a sustainable system and that are doing maintenance correctly. And there's a lot of ways to do that. If your maintenance program is managed by the BMP owners themselves, and this is the style that's been adopted by some, inspections are even more important. Some of these could be self-inspections. We do cleanings where we take a picture of the building and we take a picture of with a timestamp, we take a picture of the BMP before we clean it, then we mow it and clean it, pick up the trash, take a picture afterwards, turn that over to the owner, give him a bill, give him a manifest for anything we had to haul away, and copy all that to the jurisdiction who can file it away, as opposed to the guy that said, please don't send me your stuff, I don't know what to do with it. That's fine. But that can be an owner-conducted inspection program. If you educate that owner how much money he can save in long-term sustainability and maintenance, you may just find that a self-inspection program will work for you. You need to educate the engineers, the contractors, the owners, and the public that maintenance is unavoidable if BMPs are collecting materials. It still amazes me that people say, oh, we're putting all our metals and all of our the stuff right there in the wet pond and they're being taken up in the plants and they're going away. And outside of some nitrogen escaping to the atmosphere, if you start putting copper and zinc into a pond, it hasn't gone anywhere, except maybe into the plants to get eaten by animals and you get it in the food chain. A BMP is collecting pollutants if it's designed correctly. If it's collecting them, you're going to have to get them out one way or the other. Certainly the gross pollutants, the sediment, the trash, the oil, the hydrocarbons, and the other materials that you can see, trash and debris and styrofoam cups. Don't neglect routine maintenance. Every time it reduces major maintenance. Most everybody understands this about a car, and they understand this about their own lawn. The routine mowing, the routine trimming will save you, get weeds while they're small instead of trying to pull out big. Everybody kind of gets this, except for some reason we've turned a deaf ear to it with our BMPs. If you hire a contractor for maintenance, be sure he's qualified. The very best way is to get references, and references from a local jurisdiction, references from other clients. You need to check their certifications, and that would be a lot of things. You can check their safety equipment. That would include maybe showing up on a job and checking them out while they're working. You can look at what their insurance rating is and their accident records. These are public. This is public data. But it's important to check because there are people that have a pump truck that pump septic tanks that go out to maintain BMPs that really aren't aware of what necessarily needs to be done. So it's important, if you want to be compliant with the rules, to check the qualifications of a maintenance contractor. And that also goes into crane operators, dragline operators. All of these professions generally have standards. They have industrial associations and societies and that sort of thing. As you know, a crane operator can be certified and that type of thing. You know, require manifests and photographs to document work. And part of that, further down, I'll talk about using your own resources. A lot of times you will have a landfill as a city. You will have a disposal facility. You'll have a wastewater treatment plant that you can provide manifest and disposal facilities and other things that will help. Random inspections after maintenance will keep the contractor honest. You get a list of 10 things that were done. If you have an inspector in that area, have him drop by and take a look just to see what the facility looks like for what was billed. And that includes checking on your own crews. Work through, I like the idea of working through one contractor for each job. Let him subcontract for special activities like dredging or hazardous waste disposal through a hazardous waste landfill, that sort of thing. It makes it simpler if you're looking for a contractor. Use your own resources when possible to support a contractor on a public works job. For example, if you mow roads all the time, you may come in and get a wet pond ready for access. You may have aggregate and other things that could give trucks dry weather access back to the pond. So there's things you can do within your own organization to support a contractor on a public works job. Know the regulations for your region and state for discharges and disposal practices. I have asked the question often about the regulations for discharge and disposal, and gotten blank stares out of municipal officials. Then I say, what do you do when you clean out a catch basin? And they start humming and dancing instead of telling me what they do, because they don't really pay close attention to what happens to that material when it comes out. And finally, if your personnel are not qualified for confined space, for an example, hire a professional. There are jobs that we come up on that we hire outside people because we are just simply not qualified to do it, and we're going to get somebody in there that does have the certification, that is qualified. This is where cities get into trouble when they attempt to do a job that they're really not qualified for, and lots of times it costs them in a lot of ways. And so my message today, the takeaway from here, is it's time for us to stop ignoring the lack of maintenance program for our BMPs. The overflowing dumpster is exactly what happens. That's a perfectly good dumpster. It's a perfectly good way to get rid of the trash, and that's a perfectly poor operation of a dumpster because somebody forgot to empty it. And it's the same thing with this pond down here. Very nice overflow, rails, sluiceway, beautiful, except for the fact that it's just slapped full of trash and a big eyesore. So, you know, we wouldn't control either one. We wouldn't condone either one of these, but that pond is a whole lot like what we do often in maintenance. So, you know, we think pollutants belong in the landfill or at least disposed of properly, and certainly not in our lakes or water. So I will open the floor to questions. Jeff is here with me so that he can answer any of the tough ones that I can't handle. Jeff, I ask you if you want to take this back. I'll be glad to let you do that.
All right, John. If you want to just pause your screen, that way it's locked. Okay. We'll open the floor to some questions here. You can feel free to type them if you have a microphone, and you would like to use audio to ask your question, we can unlock your mic. Also, I'd like to share that during it, I had ran a poll just to kind of get a sense of what's going on out there. And of our small group, 22% do have a maintenance ordinance in place. 44% of the respondents do not, and then 33% did not, doesn't apply to them. With that, also, I'd like to make everybody aware that the Stormwater Equipment Manufacturers Association will be releasing on their website a draft maintenance ordinance for town entities and public entities to utilize, and that I had put the web address up there in the chat window, stormwaterassociation.com, if you want to keep an eye on that, and that'll be coming available hopefully here in the coming month. Doesn't appear like there's too many questions, John. You guys must have done too good of a job.
Well, then I will have to say, remember the words Storm System Services. I'll give a plug for Jeff here. Storm System Services, if you've got a maintenance problem, we would love to get you work, but we also have probably the most experienced man in the country right here for maintaining BMPs, and so he always does this, and so I'm not putting him on the spot. He will give you his time if you are in the remote wilds of Michigan and have a question about maintaining BMPs. Call us up, ask for Storm System Services. Jeff will get on the phone with you and give you his best answer to a problem you may have. And we want to encourage people to do maintenance. Obviously, it's good for our business. We don't have to get work in order to help share what we've learned. I would be happy to do that. So, well, I appreciate you guys coming today. As you know, my email, John, I'm putting in the chat window right now, johnmall@crystalstream.com. If you're too shy to ask your question here, just send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to take your questions. So thank you so much for coming today. And don't forget to give Jeff Askew a call. His email, same address, jaskew@crystalstream.com or at stormsystemservices.com. Thanks a lot, guys.